Breaking news. Welcome to today's headlines. UN tells Nigeria to unconditionally release, compensate Nnamdi Kanu. UN tells Nigeria to unconditionally release, compensate Nnamdi Kanu. To my dear listeners from wherever you're listening from, please stay tuned as I read today's news. The United Nations, UN Human Rights Council, Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, has indicted both Nigeria and Kenya government for the arrest and extraordinary rendition, torture and continued detention of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, without due process. UN therefore asked Nigerian government to immediately release Kanu unconditionally and pay him adequate compensations for the arbitrary violation of his fundamental human rights. It also recommended that government officials responsible for the torture method to the IPOB leader be investigated and punished. The UN body further directed Nigeria to report back within 6 months of the transmission of its opinions on Kanu's matter. Steps taken to comply with all the recommendations thereof. It referred the case of Kanu's torture to Special Rapporteur on Torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment for further consideration. The UN Working Group also threatened to take further action to ensure the recommendations are complied with, noting that both Nigeria and Kenya are signatories to the convention and should comply. The 16-page report dated July 20, 2022 was adopted on April 4 by the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention at its 93rd session held between March 30, April 8, 2022. The unedited version of the document, cited by Vanguard, was marked Opinion Number 25, 2022 concerning Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, Nigeria and Kenya. The Working Group on Arbitrary Detention was established in Resolution 1991-42 of the UN Commission on Human Rights. In accordance with its methods of work, the Working Group on December 30, 2021 transmitted to the Nigerian and Kenya government a communication concerning Mr. Nnamdi Kanu. According to the report, Nigerian replied to the communication on 25th January 2022, while the government of Kenya did not reply. Both countries are parties to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The Working Group said in the report that Kanu was a victim of state persecution as Nigeria failed to provide convincing explanations with proof that he is guilty of treason and other criminal allegations leveled against him. Noting the failure of the government to explain what actions of Mr. Kanu amounted to such criminal act and how, and observing the lack of any evidence that any of his actions may, in fact, amount to such crimes, the working group concludes that Mr. Kanu is in fact being prosecuted for the peaceful exercise of his right, most notably his freedom of opinion and expression. In the present case, the government of Nigeria has presented no exceptions permitted under Article 19, 3 of the Covenant, nor is there any evidence to suggest that Mr. Kanu's exercise of his right to freedom of opinion and expression was anything but peaceful. In fact, the government has chosen not to provide any explanation for the arrest, detention, and subsequent proceedings against Mr. Kanu. In these circumstances, the working group concludes that Mr. Kanu detention is thus arbitrary under Category 2, UN Working Group said. The working group also said there was no evidence that international laws were observed in the arrest and rendition of Kanu from Kenya. The 16-page dossier reading part in the present case, Mr. Kanu was not furnished with an arrest warrant by Nigerian authorities, nor was he promptly informed of the grounds of his arrest in Nigeria. Nor was he promptly informed of the grounds of his arrest in Nigeria. Consequently, the working group finds that Mr. Kanu's continued deprivation of liberty violates his right under Article 3 and 9 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 9 of the Covenant, and Principles 2, 4, and 10 of the Body of Principles and constitute arbitrary detention under category. To my dear listeners, now we've come to the end of our today's news. Please do drop by at the comment section and let's know what your view